I stood in the doorway, locking eyes with him firmly. "You mean after everything I've done for you?" I challenged. Alicia appeared weary, her silence palpable. Finally she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" I gestured towards a table behind me where photographs lay scattered. "All I ever did was help. All I ever asked for was respect. But you treated me like trash. This is my way of saying you can't act like that without facing consequences." Corey attempted to push past me, but I stood my ground. "If you want to resolve this," I said, "get your act together. Pay me back or get out of that house before the bank does it for you." They left, but not before Alicia turned to me, tears brimming in her eyes, and said, "You were supposed to be family." I nodded in acknowledgement. I had been. And then I closed the door. In the days that followed, I hoped that perhaps I had finally reached them. I thought the fear of losing their home, their finances, and the comfort they had grown accustomed to might stir something within them. But a week later, a letter arrived from a lawyer. Corey and Alicia were attempting to file a restraining order against me, alleging that I was harassing them and posing a danger to their children. I couldn't help but chuckle. I had never raised my voice around those boys or laid a hand on anyone. I promptly took the letter to my own attorney, the one my friend had helped me find. After reviewing the paperwork, he remarked, "This is poorly constructed. It won't hold up, but it indicates something important. They're scared. They should be." While I was engaged in meetings and filing necessary documents, my lawyer uncovered something more alarming. Corey had recently attempted to purchase a second property using my co-signature, forging my signature from an old check onto a digital form. This revelation escalated the situation from betrayal to criminal activity. I filed a police report, compiling all relevant evidence, bank records, forged documents, and emails demonstrating Corey's unauthorized access to my financial information. I even discovered a message where he joked about how the old man's money is good for something. It made my stomach churn. Within days, detectives reached out to me regarding the case of fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Suddenly, this was no longer just a family dispute, but an open investigation. That same week, I received a phone call from an unfamiliar voice. "Is this Raymond Carter?" the woman inquired. "Yes," I replied. "My name is Angela. I work at Maple Grove Elementary. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Your number is still listed as an emergency contact for Jackson." My heart sank. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She sighed. "I probably shouldn't say too much, but we have some concerns regarding neglect. He's been coming to school hungry, tired, and in shoes that are 2 sizes too small. He mentioned he misses you." I had to sit down. While Corey was out gambling and Alicia focused on suing me, my grandson, the same child I had bought shoes for just weeks prior, was arriving at school looking as if no one cared. I asked Angela to keep me informed discreetly, and she agreed, mentioning that several other teachers had begun documenting their concerns. Jackson had told them that Grandpa used to bring us food. I decided to call Child Protective Services, CPS, and relayed everything I knew. They informed me that there was already an open file regarding the situation. I granted them permission to contact me if necessary. At that moment, I realized this was no longer about revenge. It was about safeguarding my grandchildren. I began sifting through old photographs, text messages, anything that demonstrated my enduring presence in their lives. I compiled evidence of birthdays I had organized, medical appointments I had attended, and school pickups I had managed. I was building a case, not yet for custody, but to show that I had always been there and that they needed someone who truly cared. Corey and Alicia must have caught wind of my activities because the next time I encountered them, it wasn't in court. It was in the parking lot of the elementary school. Corey approached me, visibly furious, his face flushed and fists clenched. "You think you can take my kids?" he spat. I didn't flinch. I'm not trying to take them, I'm trying to protect them from you. Alicia stood behind him, recording the exchange on her phone. You're making this worse, she cautioned. We can fix this if you stop pushing. I stared at her for an extended moment. My daughter, the girl I had raised, was now a stranger who had allowed her children to slip through the cracks. I responded, deliberately, I'll stop pushing when you start parenting. They left without another word. 3 days later, I received a call from CPS informing me they would conduct a home visit at Corey and Alicia's residence. I wasn't certain what triggered it, perhaps the school's report, my earlier call, or both. But it was happening, and I was prepared. I knew exactly what they would uncover behind that carefully maintained facade, behind the cheerful smiles on social media that suggested everything was perfect. They would find the truth, and soon everyone else would too. 2 weeks later, their world unraveled. The CPS visit did not unfold as Alicia and Corey had anticipated. They may have spruced up the house and coached the boys on what to say, but you cannot fabricate structure, routine, and fundamental parenting. An empty refrigerator with nothing but leftover fast food spoke volumes. I later received the full report. Jackson told the social worker that he often ate cereal with water, that his mother slept excessively during the day and yelled at him when he made noise. The youngest, Eli, still in pull-ups, had not seen a pediatrician in over a year. The house was cluttered, lacking basic safety measures like baby gates and cabinet locks. The worker documented risks of neglect, inconsistent care, and a prior family support system that had been removed, namely me. A week following the visit, CPS reached out and asked if I would be willing to take the boys in temporarily while they reviewed the case. I didn't hesitate. I picked them up on a rainy Thursday evening. Alicia offered little in the way of conversation, while Corey remained inside, avoiding eye contact. They handed me a garbage bag containing a few clothes and a tablet that wouldn't even charge. I took them home, gave them baths, prepared spaghetti, and let them fall asleep on the couch while watching cartoons. For the first time in weeks, Jackson didn't have to act as the adult. Meanwhile, the storm was quickly closing in on Corey and Alicia. The bank flagged Corey's attempted property purchase as fraud following my police report. The forged signature was a felony, and the officer I spoke with described it as the most careless paper trail he had ever encountered. Corey was arrested for fraud and identity theft. The investigation revealed that he had also opened 2 credit cards in my name, accumulating $4,200 in debt across both accounts. Shortly after his arraignment, I received a letter from the prosecutor detailing that if convicted, Corey could face up to 4 years in prison. The court order that froze all his assets, joint accounts, and vehicles meant Alicia was left without resources. No money, no car, since I had canceled the insurance, and the title was in my name. She hadn't held a job in over a year. I didn't gloat or revel in their downfall. I simply chose not to assist them. Their house fell into disarray, having missed 2 mortgage payments. Without my credit to support the loan, the bank reevaluated their situation and issued a default notice. Foreclosure proceedings commenced shortly thereafter. They called me, pleading, "Dad, please just co-sign again. Just one more time. We can fix this." I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked their number and changed mine the following day. The boys remained with me full-time. CPS continued to check in, but everything was going well. The school even provided a letter stating that the boys had improved significantly. Better moods, increased alertness, and stable behavior. Jackson made a friend for the first time in over a year. 5 months later, the final court hearing for Corey's case took place. I sat silently in the back of the courtroom as Alicia walked in, visibly worn and bitter, barely glancing in my direction. Corey stood beside his lawyer, wearing a wrinkled suit that seemed ill-fitting. The charges against him were read aloud: fraud, forgery, theft, and violation of fiduciary trust. His attorney attempted to argue for probation, claiming he had a supportive wife and 2 children who needed him, but the judge was unswayed. You exploited your children's grandfather as if he were a personal ATM. You showed no remorse until you were caught. You lied, you stole, and worst of all, you squandered a future that someone else had built for you. Corey was sentenced to 18 months in state prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 12. Alicia cried, not for the consequences of their actions, but for what she had lost. After the sentencing, she attempted to approach me outside the courthouse. "Dad, I made mistakes. I see that now. Can we just go back to how it was?" I regarded her for a long, reflective moment. "I would have given you everything. I did give you everything." And she had repaid me with a trash bag and a train ticket. She swallowed hard. "So that's it?" I responded, "No, that's not it." I handed her an envelope containing a comprehensive list of all I had paid for over the past 10 years. The car, credit cards, the house, vacations, food, children's clothing, repairs, and at the bottom, a total amount due, $134,910.38, marked, "Paid in full through pain, years, and silence. Never again." I took various steps to support my family. I paid off their credit card debt, repaired their vehicle, and even canceled my own vacation so they could have a getaway. However, during a surprise visit, I was taken aback to find my belongings stuffed in a trash bag outside their home. My daughter confronted me, stating, "We're moving on, Dad. You're too needy." My son-in-law handed me a train ticket, simply saying, "Just go." I walked away in silence, but the following weekend, I returned with an admission. I'm not good at discussing my feelings. I grew up in an era where men worked hard without complaint, prioritizing family above all else. I've lived in Dayton, Ohio, my entire life, dedicating nearly 4 decades to the same machine shop. I married young and welcomed my daughter, Alicia, when I was just 25. Tragically, I lost my wife to ovarian cancer when Alicia was only 8 years old, leaving us to navigate life together as a duo. I made every effort to ensure she didn't feel the absence of her mother. I learned to cook, styled her hair, and attended every school event, even after long shifts at work. I often put my needs aside to prioritize hers, ensuring she had everything she required. When Alicia met Corey, I kept my reservations to myself, despite my initial dislike for him. He always seemed to think he was a benefactor merely by being present, an opportunist who frequently changed jobs without any real commitment. Nonetheless, Alicia loved him, and that was sufficient for me. I assisted them whenever they needed help, as any devoted father would. In recent years, I provided significant support, especially after they had 2 children in quick succession, which strained their finances. I paid off over $11,000 in credit card debt for them when Corey claimed he was unemployed. I also covered the costs for their car repairs, new tires, brakes, and an oil change. When their refrigerator broke, I purchased a new one, handling the delivery and installation without hesitation. To be actively involved in my grandchildren's lives, I began making the 2-hour drive to their home 4 times a week. I wanted to be there for them, and even started crafting snacks and activities I learned from YouTube to keep them entertained. Alicia always expressed her gratitude, and that acknowledgement was enough to motivate me. Last summer, I had planned a long-awaited road trip out west to places like Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore, equipped only with my old Canon camera. But when Corey was laid off again, Alicia felt overwhelmed and suggested they needed a break. I willingly canceled my trip, encouraging them to take it instead and giving them $3,000 for their vacation. I watched them post pictures from a cabin in Asheville, enjoying hot tubs, hikes, and wine tastings, and I smiled at each one. Fast forward a few weeks. I hadn't seen the boys in a while and attempted to reach out via calls and texts, but received no responses. So, I decided to surprise them. On a Friday afternoon, I drove down, stopping at the grocery store to buy their favorite snacks, steaks for grilling, and new shoes for Jackson, their eldest. However, upon arriving, I noticed something was amiss. The curtains were drawn, and the porch light was on despite the daylight. Then I saw the black trash bag on the steps. At first I thought it was garbage, but as I approached I recognized my old flannel jacket sticking out. Upon inspection, I discovered everything inside belonged to me: shirts, shoes, and even the mug I used during visits. Alicia emerged from the front door with her arms crossed and no hint of a smile. "Dad," she said bluntly, "we've talked about this. You can't just show up. We're moving on." I was taken aback, my heart racing as I struggled to comprehend her words. "What do you mean?" I stammered. "You're too needy," she reiterated. I stood in shock, my chest tightening. I had never asked them for anything. At that moment, Corey appeared behind her, holding a folded paper. "Here," he said, shoving it toward me. "It's a train ticket back to Dayton." I opened it to find it was for that very day. They had conspired against me. I didn't shout or contest. I simply nodded, picked up the trash bag, and left in silence. Tears streamed down my face all the way home, a release I hadn't anticipated. The following weekend, I withdrew from the world, sitting in silence as my phone remained eerily quiet. No messages or calls, not even from the boys. By Sunday night, I made a resolute decision. If they viewed me as disposable, they would soon learn the extent of my contributions. I wasn't a naive old man. I had kept meticulous records and receipts, documenting everything they were oblivious to. The next weekend, I returned, not with groceries, but with a briefcase full of evidence and a plan. I had barely slept that week, replaying the events. In my mind, Alicia's dismissive look and Corey's smug demeanor as he handed me that train ticket. I recalled how quickly they had discarded me. As I sifted through my memories of aiding them, I realized I had access to financial documents because I had been the one footing the bills. I opened a drawer in my desk, revealing a stack of paperwork related to their finances. The car was registered in my name, the insurance was under my account, and the refrigerator purchase was on a credit card I had opened for them. Furthermore, I was a silent co-signer on their mortgage, as they had struggled to secure the loan independently. I remembered Corey assuring me it was merely a formality, and that I wouldn't be held responsible. However, I now realized the extent of my commitment. Hours passed as I examined the documents, and then I stumbled upon something I had forgotten. 2 years earlier, Corey had asked me to assist him in setting up a joint checking account for a business venture. I had deposited $6,000 to help kickstart it, which he never followed through on. Instead, he had used that money to cover gambling debts. I logged into the account, which was still under my name, and discovered multiple withdrawals, labeled with various gambling sites, amounting to over $9,000 lost in a year and a half. My feelings of hurt transformed into anger. I began organizing everything, printing documents, highlighting crucial sections, and reaching out to my bank and insurance company for clarity. I contacted a friend from my old job who now worked with a real estate attorney to gather more information. The following Saturday, I returned to Alicia and Corey's house, this time with a briefcase full of evidence. I parked across the street, waiting for them to leave with the kids. I observed them as they loaded into their Honda, the same vehicle I had repaired, adorned with new clothing and accessories. Once they departed, I approached their front door and rang the bell, but no one answered. Still, I had retained a spare key they never requested back, so I let myself in. Inside, I noticed numerous new items: a flat-screen television, a wine fridge, and a new gaming console. I sat at their kitchen table, laid out my documents, and took photographs of every luxurious item I could find. Before leaving, I placed a stack of papers in a folder with a sticky note that read, "Let's talk." It took them 3 days to respond. Alicia was the first to call, asking, "Dad, why were you in our house?" I remained silent. You left a bunch of papers here. What is this? She pressed. When I asked if she had read them, there was a pause. Corey was handling it, she said. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking of how he would manage that. I hung up, and the next day, Corey texted me, accusing me of being petty and dramatic, claiming I wouldn't take the house from my own daughter. I chose not to reply, instead sending him a photo of the mortgage agreement, his credit report, and the account with the missing funds. 2 days later, I filed my first action, removing myself from all joint accounts, freezing the co-owned bank, card, and canceling the car insurance since it was in my name. I informed the mortgage lender of my withdrawal of financial support, which would trigger a reevaluation of their loan. Given Corey's gambling habits and unstable job history, I knew the bank wouldn't look favorably upon their situation. When they visited me that weekend, it was not to apologize but to issue threats. "You're seriously trying to ruin us?" Corey shouted. "After everything we've done for you?" I didn't invite them in. Her face turned pale, her eyes reddening as she processed the reality of what I had shared. I turned and walked away, not to be cruel, but to finally bring closure to this chapter and to make peace with the truth. You can offer someone your entire heart and life, and they may still discard you if they remain unaware of the true cost. But the boys, they were safe now. And when Jackson inadvertently called me Dad, I did not correct him, for in all the ways that truly mattered, I was.